Lady Ashburn's smile had been perfectly polite when she'd told Odette that the companion position had been filled. Filled yesterday, in fact. But wasn't it lovely that Odette had attended tonight anyway? The dismissal was a blade wrapped in silk, delivered in front of 3 other patronesses who'd suddenly found their champagne fascinating. Odette had smiled back, murmured something gracious, and fled to the cloakroom before the humiliation could show on her face. That's when her fingers closed around velvet that burned like a living thing. The coat, dark, expensive, wrong, pulsed against her palm as she fled deeper into the corridor, and the heat wasn't fabric friction or panic sweat. It was something alive, crawling up her wrist like invisible fingers, tightening around her ribs until she couldn't breathe properly. She'd grabbed the wrong coat. She knew that now. But when she tried to let go, her hand wouldn't open, and the corridor behind her filled with a presence so heavy the candles flickered. A man's voice cut through the sudden quiet, low and controlled in a way that made her spine lock. "That," he said, "doesn't belong to you." Odette turned. Viscount Tristan Mallory stood in the doorway like he'd been carved from something harder than marble. Tall, dark-haired, perfectly still in a way that made her think of predators deciding whether to strike. The ballroom noise died behind him, conversations cutting off mid-word, laughter going brittle and false. Everyone knew who he was. Everyone knew what happened when you caught his attention. She'd spent the entire evening trying not to. "I apologize, my lord." Her voice came out steadier than she'd expected, which was something. She held out the coat, fingers shaking now, palm burning where the fabric touched skin. "I mistook it for, don't." He moved forward, and the air pressure changed. 3 steps, and he was close enough that she could see the amber flecks in eyes that were too focused, too aware, like he was listening to something she couldn't hear. Close enough that she noticed his hands, long-fingered, deliberate, the kind of hands that looked like they'd never fumbled anything in their life. "Don't lie to me, Miss Carroway. You're not very good at it." Her stomach dropped. He knew her name. Worse, he knew her family name, which meant he knew exactly what the Carroways were now. Disgraced. Desperate. One creditor's lawsuit away from losing the last shred of respectability that kept her mother from a charity home, and her sister from a marriage that would destroy her. "I'm not lying." She pulled the coat closer to her chest without meaning to, and his gaze tracked the movement with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "I grabbed the wrong, you grabbed mine." His voice stayed quiet, but something underneath it wasn't. Something that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up, even as heat pooled low in her stomach. "And now it won't let you go, will it?" The fever spiked. Odette's knees buckled, and she caught herself against the wall. Velvet still clutched in both hands. The burning sensation had spread to her shoulders, her throat, crawling up the back of her neck like invisible claws. She could feel her pulse in her teeth, in her fingertips, in places she absolutely should not be thinking about, while trapped in a corridor with London's most dangerous aristocrat. "What did you do to it?" The accusation came out hoarse, edged with something close to panic she couldn't quite swallow down. Tristan's expression didn't change, but his mouth thinned. "The better question," he said, "is what you did to yourself. Where did you get that cut?" "What?" He reached out slowly, deliberately, giving her time to flinch away, and turned her right hand palm up. There was blood on her glove. Not much. Just a thin line across the base of her thumb where she'd caught it on the cloakroom door latch 20 minutes ago. She hadn't even noticed. His fingers were warm through the silk. Warmer than they should be. And the way he was looking at her hand, focused, intent, like he was reading something written on her skin, made her breath catch. "You bled on the sigil." His thumb pressed against the cut through the fabric, and the contact sent a jolt of heat straight through her that had nothing to do with wounds and everything to do with the fact that she could suddenly smell cedar and something darker, wilder, like forests at midnight. "How long ago?" Odette jerked her hand back, pulse hammering. "I don't know what you're... 20 minutes? 30? He stepped closer, close enough now that she had to tilt her head back to hold his gaze. Close enough that she noticed the way he moved. Smooth and deliberate, like a man who'd never had to rush toward anything because everything came to him eventually. "Answer the question. Why does it matter?" Because, Tristan said quietly, and his voice did something to her that the bond couldn't fully explain. The longer it sets, the worse it gets. And if we don't stabilize you in the next 10 minutes, you're going to pass out in this corridor and wake up in my physician's care, whether you like it or not. She should have been afraid. She was afraid. But underneath the fear was something sharper, colder, the part of her that had kept the Caraway household running for 2 years while her father drank himself toward the grave, and her mother pretended the creditors weren't circling. The part that noticed details other people missed. "You're not surprised," Odette said. "You expected this." His eyes narrowed slightly, the first crack in that perfect control. "Clever. Answer my question. What is this coat?" For a long moment, he just looked at her, assessing, measuring something she couldn't name. Then he reached past her, not touching, but close enough that she felt the heat of his body through her dress, close enough that her breath stuttered, and pushed open the door behind her. A smaller room, private, a single lamp burning low on a side table. "Inside," Tristan said. "Now. Before someone sees you like this and starts asking questions neither of us wants to answer." Odette didn't move. "What happens if I refuse?" "You collapse. I carry you out. Your reputation, such as it is, dies tonight." He tilted his head slightly, studying her face with an attention that felt almost physical. "But you already know that. You're weighing options, deciding if the risk of going with me is worse than the certainty of what happens if you stay." God help her, he was right. She walked through the door. The room was small, richly appointed, and very clearly not meant for guests. Tristan closed the door behind them with a soft click that sounded louder than it should have. Odette stayed near the wall, the coat still pressed against her like armor, even though the burning sensation had started to ease the moment she'd stepped into the same space as him. That should have been more concerning than it was. "Sit," Tristan said, gesturing to a chair near the lamp. "I'd rather stand." That wasn't a request. Odette stayed exactly where she was. "Then you'll be disappointed." Something flickered across his face, surprise, maybe, or amusement. Hard to tell with a man who looked like he'd forgotten how to smile years ago. He moved to the side table, poured something amber into a glass, and held it out. She watched his hands again without meaning to, the steady pour, the precise movements, the complete control in every gesture. "Stop noticing," she told herself. "Stop." "Brandy," he said. "It won't fix the bond, but it'll take the edge off until we can get you somewhere more appropriate." "Bond?" The word came out sharper than she'd intended. "What bond?" "The one you triggered when your blood touched the protection sigil sewn into that coat's lining." He set the glass down when she didn't take it. "It's old pack magic, pre-Victorian, designed to mark territory, claim mates, and protect bloodlines. In this case, it's decided you're mine." The room tilted. Odette grabbed the chair back, knuckles white. "That's not possible." "And yet," Tristan gestured at the coat still clutched in her arms, "you can't let go. Your body temperature has spiked. Your pulse is erratic. You feel better when I'm close and worse when I'm not. Those symptoms will get more severe over the next few hours. Fever, disorientation, pain. Eventually, your body will start trying to shift even though you're human, which will hurt in ways you can't imagine and won't survive." Her throat had gone dry. "Shift. Into a wolf." He said it like he was commenting on the weather, but his voice had dropped lower, rougher. "I'm the Alpha King, Miss Caraway. I rule the pack territories from here to the Scottish border. That coat is mine. The sigil is mine. And as of 20 minutes ago, according to magic that doesn't care about human law or your opinions, so are you." Odette's mind went blank. Then it went into the cold, sharp space it always found during a crisis. The space that noticed things, patterns, inconsistencies. "You're lying," she said. Tristan went very still. "Excuse me?" "Not about all of it, but about some of it." She forced herself to let go of the coat, let it fall onto the chair, and met his eyes directly. "You said the symptoms get worse, that I'll try to shift and it will kill me. But you're not panicking. You're not rushing. You poured brandy. Which means either you're a monster who enjoys watching humans suffer, or there's a way to stabilize this that you haven't mentioned yet." The silence stretched. Then, slowly, Tristan smiled. It wasn't a kind smile, but it was real, and it changed his face completely. Made him look younger, more dangerous, like the wolf was closer to the surface than she'd thought. Her stomach flipped. "You're going to be trouble," he said quietly. "Aren't you?" "I'm going to be reasonable." Odette straightened, ignoring the tremor in her hands and the way her body wanted to lean toward him. "Tell me what you want." "Smart girl." He leaned against the table, arms crossed, and the casual pose did nothing to make him look less dangerous. If anything, the looseness in his posture made her more aware of the coiled strength underneath, the sense that he could move faster than she could blink if he chose to. "Here's the situation. The bond can be stabilized, but it requires proximity. Close, regular proximity. You'll need to stay within a certain range of me, at my estate, under my protection, until we can properly unbind the sigil. That process takes time, weeks, possibly months. How many weeks? I don't know yet. It depends on how deep the claim has set." His gaze sharpened, and she felt the weight of it like a touch. "But here's what I do know. Baron Whitlock Crane has been watching you all evening. He saw you leave with that coat. He's already started whispering to the right people about what it might mean. By tomorrow morning, your name will be linked to mine in ways that will make employment impossible and marriage unlikely. Your family's creditors will call in their debts. Your sister's prospects will evaporate. Your mother will have no choice but to seek refuge with relatives who have made it very clear they consider the Carraways an embarrassment." Each word landed like a blow. Because he was right. All of it. Odette had spent 6 months navigating London society with perfect precision. One mistake away from total collapse. And she'd just made that mistake. "What do you want?" she asked again, hating how small her voice sounded. "The same thing you do." Tristan pushed off the table, closed the distance between them with 2 long strides. Up close, she could see the faint scar at his temple. The way his eyes weren't quite one solid color, but amber and brown, and something that caught the lamplight like animal shine. "A solution. I need someone in my household who can read people the way you do. Someone smart enough to spot the lies my wolves miss and brave enough to tell me the truth. Someone who understands how society works and can help me navigate the politics that are about to get much, much worse." "Why would they get worse?" "Because Baron Whitlock wants my title and my territory. He's been building a case that I'm unstable, unfit to lead. And now he has you, a respectable woman, mysteriously bound to me through pack magic. As evidence." His voice dropped lower, and she felt it in her chest. "Unless you're not mysterious. Unless you're my willing guest. My companion. My—" He trailed off, but the implication hung in the air like smoke. Odette's stomach twisted. "You want me to pretend we have an understanding. I want you to live in my household, use your skills to help me outmaneuver Whitlock, and stay close enough that the bond doesn't kill you. What society thinks about that arrangement is irrelevant." "Irrelevant?" she laughed, and it came out bitter. "My lord, I don't think you understand what you're asking. A woman living under your roof without family, without chaperone. You'll have a lady's maid, a companion if you want one, your own suite of rooms with locks on the doors." His posture stiffened slightly. "I'm not asking you to be my mistress, Miss Carraway. I'm asking you to be my strategist. There's a difference. Society won't see it that way." "Society," Tristan said quietly, "is going to ruin you whether you agree to this or not. Whitlock has already made sure of that. The only question is whether you're ruined and helpless or ruined and powerful." The words hit like a physical blow. Because he was right. She could feel it in her bones, the trap closing, the options narrowing, the future collapsing into a single ugly choice: stay and become his creature, leave and watch her family fall apart. "What exactly do you want from me?" Her voice came out steadier than her hands. "Specifically." Tristan's expression shifted, something almost like respect crossing his face. "You notice things, micro-expressions, tone shifts, timing. I need you to attend social functions with me, read the room, and report what you see. I need you to review correspondence, track patterns, and help me anticipate Whitlock's moves. I need you to be present at pack meetings, under human cover, and tell me which of my wolves are lying. And in return, I protect you. I shield your reputation as much as possible. I pay your family's debts and secure your sister's dowry. I give you employment that's respectable enough to matter." He paused. "And when this is over, when we've dealt with Whitlock and unbound the sigil, I help you rebuild. New name, new city, new start, whatever you need." It was a good offer. Too good. Which meant there was something he wasn't telling her. "What aren't you saying?" Odette asked. Tristan's mouth twitched. "You don't miss much, do you?" "No, I don't." He was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice had lost some of its edge. "The bond is real. The symptoms are real. And proximity will help. But there are side effects. The closer we are, the stronger certain instincts become. Protection, possession. The wolf doesn't always distinguish between keeping you safe and keeping you close." He met her eyes, and the directness of it made her breath catch. "I'll control it. But you need to understand that this arrangement comes with complications. Such as the fact that you'll be able to feel when I'm near. You'll know when I'm angry or hurt or—" He trailed off. "The bond goes both ways, Miss Carraway. I'll feel you too. Your fear, your anger, everything." The intimacy of it made her skin crawl and burn and ache in ways she absolutely could not think about right now. Not when he was standing this close. Not when she could see the pulse point at his throat and found herself wondering what his skin would feel like under her fingertips. "Stop it." "I want terms," Odette said. "Written terms." Tristan raised an eyebrow. "Elaborate. I want a contract. Signed and witnessed. Guarantees for my family, specific amounts, specific protections. I want a clause that states I can leave if you break certain boundaries. No forced intimacy. No isolation without a companion present. Access to correspondence with my family. And an end date. 3 months. If you can't unbind the sigil in 3 months, you let me go anyway and we find another solution." The silence stretched. Then Tristan smiled again, that sharp, approving smile that made her pulse kick in ways that had nothing to do with fear. "Done," he said. "I'll have my solicitor draw up the papers tomorrow. Tonight," Odette lifted her chin. "I want them tonight, before I leave this house with you. You drive a hard bargain for someone who has no leverage." "I have exactly one piece of leverage, my lord." She held his gaze, even though it felt like touching a live wire. "I can say no. I can walk out of this room, let the fever take me and die on a London street, rather than become your creature. You need me alive and willing. So yes, I'll negotiate." For a long moment, he just looked at her. Not assessing now, something else. Something that made her aware of how small the room was, how alone they were, how easy it would be for him to. He crossed to the door, opened it, and spoke to someone in the hallway. Low, clipped orders she couldn't quite hear. When he turned back, his expression was unreadable. "Rowan will bring the solicitor within the hour. We'll draft the contract here. You'll sign, and then you'll come home with me." He paused. "Anything else?" Odette's throat was dry. Her hands were shaking. The fever was coming back, creeping up her spine with teeth. But she forced herself to stay upright, stay present, stay here. "Yes," she said quietly. "One more thing." "What?" "When this is over, when Whitlock is dealt with and the bond is broken, I want a letter of reference, from you, stating that I worked for you in a professional capacity and performed admirably." She met his eyes. "I want my reputation back, or as much of it as can be salvaged." Tristan studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded once, sharp and final. "Done," he said. "Welcome to the pack, Miss Carraway." And just like that, the trap closed. The contract was signed by 2 in the morning. Odette's hand cramped from reading every clause twice, while the solicitor, a thin gray man who asked no questions, sat silent as a ghost. Tristan stood by the window the entire time, watching the street below like he expected someone to come through the door with a warrant. Maybe he did. When the ink dried, Rowan appeared. Tristan's beta was exactly what Odette had expected from a man who served the Alpha King. Tall, silent, and watchful in a way that made her feel like he was cataloging every breath she took. He didn't speak to her, just nodded once at Tristan, took her small travel case, packed in 10 minutes under the supervision of a very nervous lady's maid, and led the way to the carriage. The ride to the estate took an hour. Odette spent most of it pressed against the far corner of the seat, trying to ignore the fact that Tristan sat across from her in the dark, close enough that she could feel the pull of the bond like a tide she couldn't swim against. Every time the carriage hit a rough patch of road and she swayed toward him, her pulse kicked. Every time his knee brushed hers through layers of skirts, heat crawled up her spine. He didn't speak, neither did she, but she was aware of his breathing, the way he sat too still, the tension radiating off him like he was holding something back through sheer force of will. When they finally stopped, Odette looked out the window and felt her stomach drop. The estate was massive. Not a country manor, not a gentleman's residence, a fortress disguised as a great house, all gray stone and iron gates and windows that watched like eyes. The kind of place that housed kings and councils and secrets that didn't survive daylight. "Welcome home," Tristan said quietly, and opened the carriage door himself before Rowan could. The inside was somehow worse. Beautiful, yes. Polished wood and thick carpets and gas lamps that cast everything in warm gold. But underneath the elegance was something else, a sense of contained violence, of power barely leashed. Odette felt it the moment she stepped through the door, felt the eyes on her from the shadows. Servants, maybe, or wolves pretending to be servants. "Your rooms are on the second floor, east wing." Tristan gestured toward a staircase that curved up into darkness. "Mrs. Vess will show you. She's the housekeeper. Human, if that matters to you. She'll assign a lady's maid and make sure you have everything you need." "And you?" The question came out before Odette could stop it. Tristan's mouth twitched. "I have work to do. Whitlock will move fast now that you're here. I need to get ahead of it." "At 3 in the morning? Alphas don't sleep much." He turned toward a hallway that led deeper into the house, then paused. "Don't wander tonight. The house is safe, but not all of it is friendly to strangers. Stay in your rooms until morning. I'll send for you after breakfast." It wasn't a request. Odette watched him disappear into the shadows and tried very hard not to feel abandoned. Mrs. Vess was a brisk, gray-haired woman with kind eyes and a nonsense air that reminded Odette of her old governess. She led the way upstairs without comment, opened a door into a suite of rooms that were easily twice the size of Odette's childhood bedroom, and gave her a brief tour. Sitting room, bedroom, private dressing room, and a bathroom with actual running water. "The maid will be here at 8, Mrs. Vess said. Her name is Pip. Good girl, very discreet. If you need anything before then, pull the bell cord. Someone will come." "Thank you." Mrs. Vess studied her for a moment, something unreadable crossing her face. Then she nodded once. "You're braver than you look, Miss Carraway. That's good. You'll need to be." And then she left. Odette stood in the center of the sitting room, still wearing her ball gown, still smelling cedar and smoke on her skin from the carriage ride, and felt the weight of the last 4 hours crash down on her all at once. She'd signed a contract with a man who turned into a wolf. She was bound to him by magic she didn't understand. And somewhere in this house, maybe in the room directly below hers, maybe in the hallway outside, the Alpha King was planning how to use her against his enemies. Odette sat down on the sofa, pressed her hands to her face, and allowed herself exactly 2 minutes to feel terrified. Then she stood up, unpacked her case, and went to bed. Morning came too fast. Pip turned out to be a cheerful girl of maybe 16 with quick hands and quicker eyes, who helped Odette into a day dress, without asking a single question about why she was here or what her arrangement with the Viscount entailed. The dress itself was new, clearly ordered in advance, which meant Tristan had been very sure she'd agree to his terms, and fit perfectly, which was somehow more unsettling than the house full of wolves. Breakfast was brought to her rooms: tea, toast, eggs, and a note in sharp, precise handwriting. "Join me in the study at 10. West Wing, 2nd floor. Rowan will escort you." T. Rowan appeared at exactly 5 minutes to 10. He led her through a maze of hallways in complete silence, stopped outside a heavy oak door, and knocked twice. A voice from inside, Tristan's, said something too low to hear. Rowan opened the door, gestured for her to enter, and then closed it behind her with a soft click. leaving her alone with the Alpha King. The study was all dark wood and leather and books that looked like they'd been here for centuries. Tristan sat behind a massive desk covered in correspondence, maps, and what looked like legal documents. He didn't look up immediately. Just finished writing something, set down his pen with careful precision, and then raised his eyes to hers. "Did you sleep?" Odette blinked. Of all the things she'd expected him to say, that wasn't one of them. "Yes." Liar, but he said it without heat. "The bond makes it hard at first. Your body thinks it's been separated from something essential. It'll ease over the next few days as your system adjusts." How reassuring. Tristan's mouth twitched. "Sit. We have work to do." Odette sat in the chair across from him, spine straight, hands folded in her lap. "What kind of work?" "The kind that keeps you alive." He pushed a stack of letters across the desk. "These arrived this morning. 3 are from Whitlock or his associates. I need you to read them and tell me which one is lying." She stared at him. "You want me to read people? You said you could do that. Prove it." His voice stayed level, but there was a challenge underneath. "You have 10 minutes. Odette picked up the first letter. It took her 7 minutes. The first letter was from a Lady Pemberton, effusive condolences on Tristan's difficult situation with that poor Caraway girl, offering her services as an intermediary if he needed help managing the scandal. Genuine concern wrapped around social climbing. Not a lie, just opportunism. The second was from a Mr. Graves, a solicitor, asking for clarification on a property dispute in Surrey. Dry, factual, boring, true. The third was from Baron Whitlock himself. Brief, polite, offering his assistance in resolving the unfortunate incident and suggesting they meet to discuss options that might benefit all parties involved. Odette set it down and met Tristan's eyes. "Whitlock. Explain." He calls it an unfortunate incident, which implies accident, but he also offers to resolve it, which implies culpability. Those two things don't match. She tapped the letter. "He's either genuinely trying to help, which seems unlikely given what you've told me, or he's positioning himself as the reasonable party for when this becomes public. The letter is designed to look good in court or council. It's not meant for you. It's meant for whoever reads it later." The silence stretched. Then Tristan leaned back in his chair, something that might have been approval flickering across his face. "Good," he said. "What else? What else? You noticed the strategy. What didn't you notice?" Odette picked up the letter again, read it more carefully. Then she saw it. The date. It's postmarked yesterday afternoon, before the ball ended, before anyone should have known there was an incident to resolve. "Very good." Tristan took the letter back, folded it precisely, and set it aside. "Whitlock knew you'd take that coat, which means either he engineered the situation or someone close to me told him it would happen." Her stomach went cold. "You have a traitor." "I have several, probably. I just don't know which ones yet." He stood, moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back. "That's where you come in. Starting tonight, you'll attend pack gatherings with me. You'll be introduced as my guest, human, under my protection, here to assist with estate management. You'll watch, you'll listen, and you'll tell me who's lying. And if I'm wrong, then someone dies who shouldn't." He said it flatly, without drama. So don't be wrong. The rest of the morning was a crash course in pack politics delivered in Tristan's study, while she tried very hard not to notice how the sunlight caught in his hair, or the way his voice dropped when he was thinking. Focus, she told herself. Focus on survival. There were 5 key players she needed to understand. Rowan Vale, beta, enforcer, Tristan's second. Loyal, but distant. Didn't trust her yet. Dr. Ambrose Hallow, pack physician operating under human cover. Brilliant, exhausted, perpetually calm even when discussing things that should have made her skin crawl. Lady Margot Thorne, a high-ranking she-wolf who controlled the Southern Territories and had made it clear she thought Tristan was too young to hold the crown. Councilman Pierce, elderly, traditional, suspicious of human involvement in pack business. And Baron Whitlock Crane, jealous heir, would-be king, and the man who wanted Tristan's throne badly enough to use her as leverage. Whitlock can't challenge me directly, Tristan explained, spreading a map across the desk. Pack law requires proof of instability or failure to protect the territories. He doesn't have that, yet. But if he can prove the bond is making me reckless, putting a human in danger, exposing pack secrets, losing control, he can call for a council review. And if the council votes against me, he trailed off. What happens? Exile, stripping of rank, or execution, depending on the offense. He said it without inflection, like he was discussing the weather. So we don't let it get that far. How? We outthink him. We stay 3 steps ahead. And we make sure that when he does move, Tristan's eyes met hers, and she felt the impact of it like a physical touch. We're ready. A knock at the door interrupted them. Rowan entered without waiting for permission, his expression tight. We have a problem, he said. Tristan's posture shifted. Subtle, but Odette felt it. The way the air pressure changed, the sense of something dangerous rising to the surface. What kind? Whitlock filed a petition with the magistrate this morning, requesting a welfare check on Miss Carraway. Claims she was seen leaving the ball in distress, may have been coerced, and he's concerned for her safety given your reputation. Odette's stomach dropped. He's positioning me as a victim. Worse. Rowan's gaze flicked to her briefly. He's positioning you as evidence. If the magistrate rules you're being held against your will or that you're unstable due to proximity to pack magic, he can force an intervention. Council gets involved. Tristan's fitness gets questioned. When? Tristan's voice had gone very quiet. The magistrate is expected tomorrow afternoon. Tomorrow, Odette's mind raced. Then we give him exactly what he doesn't want. We show him I'm here willingly, competently, and completely in control. Both men looked at her. How? Tristan asked. I write to my mother, today. A letter explaining that I've accepted a position as your estate manager's assistant. That you've been nothing but courteous. That my family's debts are being handled as part of my employment agreement. Make it factual, boring, respectable. She met Tristan's eyes. And I request that she visit, soon. If she confirms I'm here willingly and in good health, the magistrate has no case. Rowan frowned. Your mother will ask questions. Let her, I'll answer them. Odette lifted her chin. I can lie convincingly when it matters, Mr. Vale. Your alpha simply caught me off guard last night. Tristan's mouth curved. Not quite a smile, but close. Do it. Rowan, arrange for the letter to be delivered by private courier. I want it in Mrs. Carraway's hands by evening. Rowan nodded and left. The silence that followed felt different, heavier, charged. You're good at this, Tristan said quietly. At what? Thinking like a strategist instead of a victim. He moved back to the desk, but didn't sit. Just stood there, close enough that she could see the faint shadows under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept either. Most people in your position would still be crying or planning escape. You're planning moves. Crying wastes time. Odette stood as well, suddenly too restless to sit. An escape isn't an option if the bond is real. It's real. Then we deal with what's real. She met his eyes. What else do you need from me today? What Tristan needed, apparently, was for her to sit in on his afternoon meetings. The first was with Dr. Hallow, a tall, thin man with wire-rimmed spectacles, and the kind of steady hands that came from years of dealing with emergencies. He examined Odette with clinical detachment, asked a series of questions about her symptoms, and then delivered his assessment with the bedside manner of a man discussing crop yields. The bond is stable for now. Proximity is helping, but you'll need to maintain it, within 50 feet most of the time, closer during high-stress situations. He glanced at Tristan. Any separation longer than 6 hours will trigger symptoms. Pain, fever, disorientation. For both of you. Odette's stomach tightened. Both? The bond goes both ways, Miss Carraway. He feels your distress. You'll feel his. Hallow cleaned his spectacles with a handkerchief. It's designed to protect mates by ensuring they stay together during vulnerable periods. In this case, it's treating you as vulnerable because you're human and newly claimed. The magic is overzealous. Can it be suppressed? Partially. I can provide tinctures that will dull the worst of it, but suppression comes with risks. He looked at Tristan. The wolf doesn't like being caged. Push too hard against the bond, and you'll lose control in other ways. Tristan's expression didn't change, but Odette felt something shift, a flicker of tension that ran through the bond like a plucked string. "We'll manage," Tristan said flatly. Hallow didn't look convinced, but he didn't argue, just packed his medical bag and left. The second meeting was worse. Lady Margot Thorne arrived at 4 with a retinue of 3 younger wolves and an air of cold authority that made Odette's spine stiffen on instinct. She was beautiful in the way a blade was beautiful, sharp, elegant, designed to cut. Her gaze swept over Odette once, dismissed her, and then locked onto Tristan. "So," she said, settling into a chair like she owned it, "you've taken a pet." "I've taken a strategist," Tristan corrected. His voice stayed level, but Odette felt the warning underneath. "Miss Carraway is here on contract. She'll be assisting with estate management and social navigation." "How modern of you." Margot's smile was all teeth. "And does your strategist understand what she's walked into? Or did you conveniently forget to mention that half the council wants you stripped of your title?" "Lady Thorne," Rowan started, but Tristan held up a hand. "Say what you came to say, Margot." "Very well," she leaned forward, gaze sharp. "Whitlock is calling for an emergency council session next week. He'll present evidence that you're unstable, that the bond with this human is proof you've lost control. He has 3 council votes already. He needs 2 more to force a review, and if that review goes badly..." She let the sentence hang. "It won't. You can't know that." "I can." Tristan's voice dropped, and suddenly the room felt smaller. "Because I won't give him ammunition. The bond is stable. Miss Carraway is here willingly. And when the council meets, they'll see exactly what I want them to see. Control." Margot studied him for a long moment, then shifted her gaze to Odette. "And you, girl, are you truly here willingly? Or has he convinced you this is your only option?" The test was obvious. Margot wanted to see if she'd flinch, defer to Tristan, or panic. Odette did none of those things. "I signed a contract, Lady Thorne. I negotiated the terms myself. I'm here because it serves my interests and my family's survival." She held the woman's gaze. "If you're asking whether I'm a victim, the answer is no. If you're asking whether I understand the stakes, the answer is yes. And if you're asking whether the Viscount has been anything other than professional, the answer is that he's treated me with more respect than most of London society ever did." The silence that followed was so complete, Odette could hear her own heartbeat. Then Margot laughed. Short, sharp, genuinely surprised. "Well," she said, standing, "perhaps you're not as foolish as I thought." She looked at Tristan. "I'll abstain from Whitlock's vote, for now. But if you lose control, if this bond becomes a liability, I won't protect you. Understood?" "Understood," Margot swept out, her wolves following like shadows. The moment the door closed, Odette's knees went weak. She grabbed the back of a chair, breathing carefully, trying to slow her racing pulse. "You did well," Tristan said quietly. "I'm terrified." "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." He moved closer, not touching, but close enough that the bond hummed between them like a living thing. "But you stood your ground. That matters. Margot respects strength. You just earned her attention, which is better than her contempt." Odette looked up at him, and for the first time since this nightmare started, felt something other than trapped. Felt like maybe she could actually survive this. "What happens tonight?" she asked. "Tonight," Tristan said, "you meet the pack." The pack gathering was held in a converted ballroom on the ground floor that had been stripped of its elegant furniture and filled instead with long tables, benches, and wolves. So many wolves. Odette stood at the entrance with Tristan's hand light on her lower back, a gesture that looked protective and felt like a brand, and tried not to let her fear show on her face. There had to be 40 people in the room, maybe more, some in human form, talking and drinking and looking entirely normal, except for the way they moved, too fluid, too aware, like they were always half a second away from becoming something else. Others were less careful about hiding what they were. She could see it in their eyes, in the way they turned to look at her with a hunger that had nothing to do with food. "Stay close," Tristan murmured. "And if anyone gets aggressive, don't run. Look at me." "What if..." "Look at me," he repeated, voice dropping into something rougher. The wolf recognizes submission to the alpha, not to the pack. If you show fear to them, they'll test you. If you show fear to me, they'll understand you're under my protection. It was horrifying advice that somehow made perfect sense. They moved through the room slowly. Tristan introduced her to key wolves, betas, gammas, enforcers, with brief explanations of their roles that she filed away for later. Most were polite, some were curious. A few looked at her like she was an insult they'd tolerate only because their alpha demanded it. And then she saw him. Baron Whitlock Crane stood near the far wall, surrounded by 3 younger wolves, who watched Tristan with barely concealed hostility. He was handsome in a cold, polished way, fair-haired, well-dressed, with the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. When he saw her, something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or calculation. He crossed the room with deliberate ease, his wolves trailing behind like guards. "Viscount Mallory," he said, voice smooth as silk. "How unexpected to see you here with your guest." "Baron Crane." Tristan's hand on her back pressed slightly firmer. A warning, though whether it was for her or for Whitlock, Odette couldn't tell. "Miss Carraway has joined my household staff. She'll be assisting with estate correspondence and social matters." "How industrious." Whitlock's gaze slid to Odette, assessing. "Miss Carraway, I trust you're settling in well?" As Whitlock began his approach, Odette caught a fractional shift in Rowan's posture beside Tristan, a slight tension in his shoulders, a stillness that felt different from his usual watchfulness. It was there and gone in a heartbeat, but she filed it away. Rowan didn't like this either. "Very well, thank you." Her voice came out steady, which was something. "I'm glad to hear it. I was concerned when I saw you leave the Ashbourne ball in such distress. I hope the Viscount has been a gracious host." The trap was obvious. If she agreed too enthusiastically, she looked coerced. If she hesitated, she looked trapped. "Lord Mallory has been exceptionally professional," Odette said carefully. "He's provided employment at a time when my family needed it most. I'm grateful for the opportunity." "How fortunate." Whitlock's smile didn't waver, but something behind it went sharp. "Though I wonder if you fully understand the nature of the household you've joined. Pack dynamics can be overwhelming for humans." "I'm learning quickly." "I'm sure you are." He glanced at Tristan. "Still, if you find yourself in need of alternative arrangements, Miss Carraway, please know that I would be happy to assist. I have connections in London who might offer more suitable employment." The offer was a threat wrapped in courtesy. Odette felt it like a blade at her throat. Before she could answer, Tristan's hand slid from her back to her waist, a gesture that was absolutely improper by human standards and unmistakably possessive by wolf ones. "Miss Carraway's arrangements are quite satisfactory," he said quietly. "And they're none of your concern, Whitlock." The temperature in the room dropped. Conversations around them went quiet. Wolves turned to watch. Whitlock's smile sharpened. "Of course, I meant no offense. Simply extending kindness to a fellow member of society who may be out of her depth. She's exactly where she needs to be." The tension stretched. Then Whitlock inclined his head, too shallow to be respectful, too precise to be dismissed as accidental, and stepped back. "Enjoy your evening," he said, and walked away. Odette didn't realize she'd been holding her breath until it escaped in a shaky exhale. That, Tristan murmured, was him declaring war. They left the gathering an hour later. The night air was cold and sharp, fog rolling in from the east, and Odette was grateful for it. Grateful for anything that cleared the stifling weight of being watched by 40 wolves who either wanted to test her or eat her. "That went better than I expected," Rowan said, falling into step beside them as they crossed the courtyard toward the main house. "Whitlock showed his hand too early," Tristan replied. "He wanted to rattle her. Instead, The attack came from nowhere. One moment they were walking. The next, something massive and snarling exploded from the shadows near the eastern gate. Odette caught a glimpse of matted fur, wild eyes, foam-flecked jaws, and then Tristan was moving. He shoved her behind him with one hand, the movement so fast it blurred. Rowan shifted instantly, clothes tearing, body reshaping into something huge and gray and terrifying in the space between one heartbeat and the next. The rogue wolf slammed into Rowan with enough force to crack bone. They went down in a tangle of claws and teeth, snarling loud enough to wake the dead. "Get back," Tristan ordered, voice rough with something that wasn't quite human anymore. Now. But Odette couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Could only watch as Rowan fought the rogue across the courtyard, blood spattering cobblestones, and more shapes appeared from the fog. 2 more rogues, maybe 3. She couldn't tell. Everything was teeth and fur and violence. One of them broke away from the fight, headed straight for her. Tristan stepped between them, and the world bent. She felt it through the bond first, a surge of raw power that made her bones ache and her vision blur. Then she saw it, watched as Tristan's body changed, reshaping in a way that should have been impossible, but was somehow inevitable. His clothes tore, his spine arched, and where a man had stood, now there was a wolf. Not like the others, bigger, darker, with eyes that burned amber gold in the lamplight, and a presence that made every other wolf in the courtyard freeze mid-strike. The rogue targeting her stopped, whined, dropped to its belly in the dirt. Tristan's wolf moved forward, silent, controlled, every step deliberate. He didn't attack, didn't need to. The rogue crawled backward on its belly, whimpering, and then turned and fled into the fog. The other rogues followed. In less than a minute, it was over. The courtyard went still, silent except for Rowan's heavy breathing as he shifted back to human form. Naked and bloody but already healing. Tristan's wolf turned, those burning eyes locking onto Odette with an intensity that should have terrified her. It did terrify her, but underneath the fear was something else, something that noticed how he'd positioned himself between her and danger, how he wasn't advancing now, just watching, waiting to see what she'd do. Odette took a breath, then another. Then she did the only thing that made sense. She didn't run. She met his eyes and said very quietly, "Thank you." The wolf's head tilted slightly, and then slower this time, controlled. Tristan shifted back. He stood there in the lamplight, breathing hard, partially clothed in torn fabric, and looked at her like he was expecting horror or disgust or panic. Odette felt all of those things, but what came out of her mouth was, "That's what you are." Yes. His voice was rough, scraped raw. "That's what I am. And you thought I'd scream. Most humans do. I'm not most humans." She was shaking. She couldn't stop shaking. But she forced herself to stay upright, stay present. "I'm the woman who signed a contract with you knowing full well what you were. So no, Lord Mallory, I won't scream. But I will ask you to please put on some clothes before we continue this conversation." For a moment, he just stared at her. Then, impossibly, he laughed. Short and sharp and genuinely surprised. Rowan, standing a few feet away in borrowed trousers, made a sound that might have been a cough or a laugh of his own. "Right," Tristan said. "Close. Good idea." They reconvened in Tristan's study 20 minutes later. Odette's hands had finally stopped shaking. Tristan had changed into clean clothes. Rowan had disappeared to coordinate patrols and hunt for wherever the rogues had come from, which left the two of them alone in lamplight, with the memory of teeth and transformation hanging between them like smoke. "Whitlock sent them," Tristan said. He stood by the window again, hands braced on the frame, staring out at nothing. "It's the only explanation. Rogues don't attack this close to packed territory unless someone pays them or threatens them into it. To make you look unstable." Odette's voice was steadier now. "To prove you can't protect your own household." "Yes. Did it work?" He turned, and the look on his face was something raw and honest that she hadn't seen before. "You didn't run. You didn't scream. You stood your ground even when I was—" He gestured vaguely at himself. "That's either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen." "Probably stupid," Odette admitted. "But running felt worse. You saved me. The least I could do was not insult you by acting like you were the monster." The silence that followed was different, heavier, charged with something she didn't have a name for. "You're not what I expected," Tristan said quietly. "What did you expect? Fear, compliance. Someone I'd have to manage and protect and keep at arm's length to preserve what was left of their dignity. He moved closer, and she felt the pull of the bond like gravity. Instead, you negotiate. You strategize. You stare down wolves and then demand I put on clothes before we discuss attempted murder. It seemed practical at the time. It was. His mouth twitched. You're practical, and clever, and far more dangerous than you look. Odette's pulse kicked. Dangerous how? You make me want to tell you things I shouldn't. Trust you with secrets that could get us both killed. That's dangerous for an alpha. He stopped just out of reach, close enough that she could see the amber in his eyes, the exhaustion around the edges. I lost control once, 5 years ago. Let the wolf make decisions that should have been mine. People died. Innocents, children. His voice went flat. I swore I'd never let it happen again. That I'd stay so controlled, so disciplined, that the wolf would never have a chance to take over. And now? Now I'm bound to you. And the bond doesn't care about control. It cares about keeping you close, keeping you safe, keeping you mine. The last word came out rough, almost angry. That's the truth you need to understand, Odette. The wolf wants you. I can manage it. I will manage it. But I need you to know what we're fighting against. Her name. He'd used her name. Not Miss Carraway. Odette. The intimacy of it made her chest tight. I'm not afraid of you, she said quietly. You should be. Maybe, but I'm not. She met his eyes. You want to know what I'm afraid of? I'm afraid of being powerless again. I'm afraid of watching my family fall apart because I couldn't save them. I'm afraid of being some man's pawn, whether it's Whitlock or my family's creditors or even you. She took a breath. But I'm not afraid of the wolf, because the wolf saved me tonight, and the man is giving me a chance to save myself. Tristan stared at her. Then slowly, he closed the distance between them, not touching, but close enough that she could feel the heat of him, smell cedar and smoke and wild things. I can't promise this won't hurt you, he said quietly. I can't promise the bond won't demand things we're not ready for. And I can't promise that Whitlock won't find a way to destroy us both. But I can promise you this. While you're under my protection, no one touches you. No one threatens you. And no one makes you powerless again. It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't romance. It was a vow. And somehow that made it more real than anything else tonight. Then we have a deal, Odette said. We already had a deal. No, that was a contract. This is different. She held his gaze. This is partnership. Something shifted in his expression. Something that looked almost like relief. Partnership, he repeated. I can work with that. For a moment, they just stood there in the lamplight, close enough to touch but not touching. And Odette felt the weight of what they'd just agreed to settle between them, like a pact made in blood. Then Tristan stepped back, breaking the spell. Get some rest, he said. Tomorrow we deal with the magistrate. And then we start planning how to bury Whitlock before he buries us. Odette nodded and turned toward the door, but before she left, she looked back. Tristan. He looked up, surprise flickering across his face at the use of his name. Thank you for trusting me with the truth. His mouth curved. Thank you for not running. And somehow, that felt like the beginning of something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. The magistrate arrived at noon the following day with a clerk, a chaperone, and an expression that suggested he'd rather be anywhere else. His name was Mr. Dennison, a thin, officious man who'd clearly been pressured into this visit by someone with more influence than sense. He examined Odette's rooms, interviewed her with the door open and Mrs. Vest present, and reviewed the contract with the kind of thoroughness that came from genuine concern, rather than political maneuvering. You signed this willingly? He asked for the third time. Yes, sir. Odette kept her voice steady, her posture perfect. Lord Mallory has been nothing but professional. My family's debts are being managed as part of my employment agreement. I have my own quarters, a lady's maid, and full access to correspondence. I've already written to my mother confirming my situation. And you understand that you may leave at any time should the arrangement become uncomfortable? I understand completely, but I have no intention of leaving. This position offers me the kind of stability my family desperately needs. Dennison studied her for a long moment, then closed his notebook with a decisive snap. Very well. I'll report to Baron Crane that his concerns appear to be unfounded. Miss Carraway seems to be in good health and spirits, and her employment arrangement appears entirely legitimate. Relief flooded through her. It had worked. Her strategy had actually worked. But as Dennison left, Odette caught sight of Tristan's expression through the study doorway. He looked tense, wrong. Like a man who'd just realized the first move in a chess game wasn't the real attack. He'll escalate, Tristan said 30 minutes later. They were back in his study, the door closed, Rowan pacing near the window like a caged animal. Dennison's report will clear us on the welfare front, but Whitlock wasn't counting on that to work. It was a distraction. From what? Odette asked. This. Rowan tossed a letter onto the desk. Emergency council session. Scheduled for 3 days from now. Whitlock's calling for a formal review of Tristan's fitness to lead, citing reckless endangerment of pack security through unauthorized human contact. Her stomach dropped. The bond. The attack. The fact that you're living here under questionable circumstances. Tristan's voice was flat. He's built a case that I've lost control, that I'm prioritizing a human over pack safety, and he has the votes to force the review. Can you fight it? I can attend. I can defend my actions, but if the council rules against me. He trailed off, but she didn't need him to finish. She'd seen what happened to wolves who lost their alpha's protection. Exile. Stripping of rank. Or worse. What does he want? Odette asked quietly. He wants me to break. To lose control in front of the council. To prove I'm unstable. Tristan's hands flattened on the desk. And the easiest way to make that happen is to threaten you. The words hung in the air like a noose. So we don't give him the chance, Odette said. We stay ahead of him. He's already moving. Rowan cut her off, expression grim. Lady Ashburn sent word an hour ago. She's hosting a charity luncheon tomorrow. High society, very public, very respectable. And she's requested your presence specifically. Odette's blood went cold. Requested or demanded? Demanded. She's framing it as an opportunity to support the Carraway family by introducing you to potential patronesses. If you refuse, it looks like Tristan is isolating you. If you attend, Rowan's expression darkened. You'll be outside pack territory, outside his protection, for at least 6 hours. 6 hours. The exact limit Dr. Hollow had warned them about. It's a trap, Odette said. Obviously. Tristan's voice had gone very quiet. But it's a clever one. If I forbid you to go, I look controlling. If you go and the bond destabilizes you in public, Whitlock has his evidence that I'm reckless. And if I accompany you to a ladies' luncheon? He smiled without humor. I look obsessed, possessive. Exactly what he wants the council to see. So what do we do? Tristan met her eyes, and she saw something dangerous flicker there. We call his bluff. You attend the luncheon. I stay here. And we both survive the separation long enough to prove the bond isn't making me unstable. And if we can't, then Whitlock wins. The luncheon was held at Lady Ashburn's Belgravia townhouse, and Odette felt wrong from the moment she stepped out of the carriage. Not sick yet, not feverish, just hollow, like something essential had been carved out of her chest and left to bleed slowly, the bond pulling, aching, demanding she turn around and go back to the estate where Tristan was probably pacing his study like a caged wolf, and trying very hard not to show how much this hurt him too. She forced herself to walk through the door. The luncheon was exactly what she'd expected. 20 high society women in expensive dresses, sipping tea and pretending to care about charity, while actually dissecting each other's reputations with surgical precision. Lady Ashburn greeted her with a smile that didn't reach her eyes and introduced her to the room as Dear Miss Carraway, who's found such interesting employment with Viscount Mallory. The emphasis on interesting made it clear what everyone was thinking. Odette smiled, nodded, accepted tea she couldn't drink, and made small talk that felt like walking through broken glass. 1 hour passed, then 2. By the 3rd hour, her hands were shaking. Are you quite all right, Miss Carraway? Lady Pemberton asked, concern dripping with false sweetness. You look rather pale. I'm fine, thank you. Odette set down her teacup before anyone could see how badly her fingers trembled. Simply a bit tired. Of course. You must be working so hard at the estate. The words were sympathetic, but the look in Lady Pemberton's eyes was pure calculation. Tell me, what exactly does an estate manager's assistant do? It seems such an unusual position for a gentleman's household. The trap was obvious. Whatever she said would be twisted, examined, used as evidence of impropriety. But before Odette could answer, a voice cut through the room like a blade. She manages what I cannot. Everyone turned. Miss Leora Pembroke stood in the doorway, Odette's friend from before the disgrace, the one person in London society who'd never cut her after her father's scandal. She crossed the room with deliberate grace and sat beside Odette like it was the most natural thing in the world. Estate correspondence, social scheduling, household accounts, Leora continued smoothly. All tasks that require discretion and intelligence. Exactly the kind of work suited to a baronet's daughter with excellent education and unfortunate circumstances. She smiled at Lady Pemberton. Surely you don't object to a woman using her skills to support her family. The challenge was clear. Lady Pemberton's mouth thinned, but she couldn't argue without looking cruel. The conversation moved on. Odette caught Leora's hand under the table and squeezed once in silent gratitude. But the relief was short-lived, because by hour 4, the fever started. Odette excused herself to the powder room and barely made it before her knees gave out. She caught herself on the sink, breathing hard, vision blurring at the edges. The fever was back, worse than before, climbing up her spine with teeth. Her pulse hammered in her throat, her wrists, behind her eyes, and underneath it all was the pull. The desperate, aching need to go back to the estate, to find Tristan, to stop this separation that felt like dying slowly. The door opened. Leora slipped inside, took one look at her, and went pale. Odette, my God, I'm fine. She forced herself upright, gripping the sink hard enough to hurt. Just a moment, I'll be fine. You look like you're about to collapse. Leora locked the door, moved closer. What's wrong? Is it him? Did Mallory? No, he's... Odette stopped, because she couldn't explain the bond without sounding insane. It's complicated. Then uncomplicate it. Because whatever's happening to you, it's getting worse. And if you collapse out there in front of those vultures, they'll tear you apart. Odette met her friend's eyes and made a decision. I need to leave. Now. Can you help me? Leora didn't hesitate. Back door, service entrance. My carriage is 2 streets over. Can you walk? I'll manage. They made it as far as the hallway before Odette heard the voice that made her blood run cold. Leaving so soon, Miss Carroway? Baron Whitlock Crane stood at the top of the stairs, perfectly positioned to block their exit. He looked polished, concerned, exactly like a gentleman worried about a lady's welfare. You don't look well, he continued, descending slowly. Perhaps you should sit down. Rest. I'm sure Lady Ashbourne would be happy to provide a room where you could recover in private. The threat was barely veiled. If she accepted, if she showed weakness here, he'd have witnesses to her episodes. Evidence that the bond was dangerous, that Tristan was reckless, that she needed protection from someone more reasonable. Someone like him. I'm perfectly fine. Baron Crane. Odette forced steel into her voice even as her vision swam, simply ready to return home. Are you certain? Because from where I'm standing, you look rather distressed. One might even say dangerously so. His smile sharpened. I would hate for you to come to harm because Lord Mallory insisted on this arrangement. Despite clear evidence, it's hurting you. Leora stepped between them, chin raised. Miss Carroway has said she's fine, and as her friend, I'm escorting her home. Kindly move aside. For a moment, Whitlock didn't budge. Just studied Odette with cold calculation, like he was deciding whether to push harder or wait for her to collapse on her own. Then footsteps sounded behind them. Mrs. Vess appeared from the servants' corridor, flanked by 2 large men who had pack enforcer written all over them despite their footman livery. Miss Carroway, Mrs. Vess said calmly. Lord Mallory sent the carriage. He thought you might wish to return early. Relief nearly buckled Odette's knees. Whitlock's expression darkened, but he stepped aside with exaggerated courtesy. Of course. Do give Lord Mallory my regards. Odette made it to the carriage, made it through the door, and then finally let herself shake. The ride back was a blur of fever and pain, and Leora's voice murmuring reassurances she couldn't quite process. By the time they reached the estate, Odette could barely stand. The enforcers had to help her from the carriage, and she hated it. Hated being weak, being carried, being exactly what Whitlock wanted her to be. But then Tristan was there. He appeared in the courtyard like he'd been waiting, took one look at her, and his expression went from controlled to something raw and furious. He caught her before she fell, lifted her like she weighed nothing, and carried her straight to his study instead of her rooms. "Get Hollow," he ordered someone. Rowan, maybe. "Now." Then they were alone, and Tristan was setting her on the sofa with a gentleness that didn't match the rage radiating off him in waves. 6 hours, he said quietly. It's barely been 5. Whitlock was there. Her voice came out thread-like. He knew exactly how long we could be separated before the bond tried to kill you. Yes, I'm aware. His hands were shaking. She could see it now, the tremor he was trying to hide, the way his control was fracturing at the edges. This is my fault. I should never have agreed to— Stop! Odette caught his wrist, held on even though her grip was weak. This isn't your fault. It's his, and we're going to bury him for it. Tristan stared at her. Then, impossibly, he smiled. You're dying and you're planning revenge. I'm not dying. I'm angry. She pulled herself upright despite the fever. And I need you to tell me the truth. All of it. How did Whitlock know about the coat? How did he know it would claim me? The silence that followed was too long. Tristan. I don't know. But his voice had changed, become careful. The coat was supposed to be in my private rooms. I wore it to the ball, yes, but I left it in the designated cloakroom with very specific instructions. No one should have been able to access it except— He stopped, went very still. Odette's stomach dropped. Except who? Except pack members with clearance to handle protected items. His eyes met hers, and she saw the moment realization hit. Someone moved it. Someone with access to both the coat and knowledge of the sigil's properties put it where you'd find it. Someone close to you. Yes. The betrayal hit like a physical blow, because it meant this wasn't random, wasn't accident. Someone had deliberately engineered the moment Odette grabbed that coat, had known her blood would trigger the claiming, had set the trap that bound her to Tristan and gave Whitlock exactly the ammunition he needed. Who? Her voice came out steady despite the rage building in her chest. Who has that kind of access? Tristan's expression went dark. 3 people, Rowan, Dr. Hallow, and Lady Margot. Before Odette could respond, the study door opened. Dr. R. Hallow entered, medical bag in hand, looking harried and concerned in equal measure. I came as quickly as— He stopped, taking in Odette's state. The separation symptoms? Yes. Tristan's voice had gone flat, dangerous. Tell me, Hallow, how exactly did Whitlock know the bond would destabilize at 6 hours? Hallow went very still. You examined her. You gave us the timeline. And now Whitlock is using that exact information to trap us. Tristan stood, and suddenly the room felt smaller. So I'll ask again. How did he know? The silence stretched. Then Hallow set down his bag with careful precision. He asked me, he said quietly. 3 days ago, said he needed to understand the bond's limitations for counsel purposes. I thought— He met Tristan's eyes. I thought he was trying to help. To find a way to unbind it safely. You told him. Tristan's voice dropped into something that wasn't quite human. You told him how to hurt her. I didn't know. Get out. Tristan, please, get out. The words came out rougher now, edged with growl. Before I do something we'll both regret. Hallow left. Odette sat in the sudden silence, mind racing. Hallow had given Whitlock the information, but that didn't explain the coat. Didn't explain who'd moved it, who'd set the original trap, unless— It wasn't just Hallow, she said slowly. Tristan turned, and she saw the wolf very close to the surface now. What? Think about it. Hallow gave him the timeline, yes. But someone else moved the coat, someone who wanted this bond to happen in the first place. Her mind clicked through the pieces, the pattern emerging. What if it wasn't about trapping you? What if it was about creating a situation where you'd have to choose? Choose what? Between the throne and me, Odette stood despite the dizziness, despite everything. Whitlock can't beat you in a straight challenge. But if you're bound to a human who's making you look unstable, if the council is threatening to strip your rank unless you give me up, she met his eyes. What would you do? The question hung between them like a blade. And in Tristan's expression, she saw the truth. He didn't know. The answer came 2 hours later in the form of a letter delivered by Whitlock's courier. Odette had recovered enough to stand, the proximity to Tristan stabilizing the worst of the bond symptoms. But the fever had left her shaky, vulnerable. And when Rowan brought the letter to the study, she felt dread pool in her stomach before he even opened it. Tristan read it in silence. Then, very carefully, he set it on the desk. He's calling for my removal, he said quietly. Effective immediately. Claims I'm unstable, dangerous, and unfit to lead. The council votes tomorrow. Tomorrow? Odette's voice cracked. That's not enough time to— It's deliberate. He doesn't want me to have time to prepare. Tristan's hands flattened on the desk. But that's not the worst part. What's the worst part? He's petitioning for your involuntary commitment to a private asylum. His voice had gone completely flat. Claims the bond has made you unstable, that you require medical supervision for your own safety. He has a physician willing to testify. And if the council rules in his favor— He met her eyes. They'll take you, tomorrow. Before I can stop them. The room tilted. An asylum. The Victorian solution for inconvenient women. Once inside, she'd have no rights, no voice, no way to prove she was sane. They could keep her there for months, years, forever. And Tristan would be forced to choose. Fight for her and lose his throne, or let her go and save his pack. It was brilliant, vicious. Exactly the kind of trap that had no good options. He's going to win, Odette heard herself say. No. Tristan's voice cut through her panic like a blade. He's not. Because you're not going to that asylum, and I'm not losing my throne. We're going to find another way. What way? He has the council votes. He has medical testimony. He's engineered a situation where no matter what we do. Then we change the situation. Tristan moved around the desk, caught her shoulders with both hands. Not gentle now. Firm. Grounding. You said it yourself earlier. We stay ahead of him. We outthink him. So think, Odette. What are we missing? She stared at him, mind racing through everything that had happened. The coat, the claiming, Hallow's betrayal, the separation trap, the asylum threat. And then she saw it. The coat, she said slowly. We've been so focused on who moved it that we never asked why it was at the ball at all. You said you left it with specific instructions. What were those instructions? Tristan frowned. To store it in the secured cloakroom, the one pack members use for items that can't be exposed to human handling. And who manages that cloakroom? The estate steward handles logistics, but the actual security— His eyes widened. Lady Margot. She oversees all protective artifacts and territorial markers. So she would have known the coat was there, would have known its properties. And she's the one person who could have moved it without raising suspicion. Odette's pulse kicked. Where is she now? Her townhouse, 2 streets from the Ashbourne estate. Tristan's expression had gone very still. Why? Because if she helped Whitlock set this trap, there's evidence. Letters, payments, something that proves they coordinated. Odette met his eyes. And if we can find it before the council meeting tomorrow, we can turn this back on him. That's breaking and entering. Theft. If we're caught. We're already caught. Odette's voice came out harder than she'd intended. They're planning to lock me in an asylum tomorrow and strip you of your crown. What exactly do we have to lose? They left at midnight. Odette, Tristan, and Rowan, all dressed in dark clothes that wouldn't catch lamplight. The plan was simple, desperate, and completely illegal. Break into Lady Margot's study, find evidence of her collusion with Whitlock, and get out before anyone noticed. If this goes wrong, Tristan started as they approached the townhouse. It won't, Odette interrupted. Because I'm right. I know I'm right. She was. They found the proof in Margot's locked desk drawer. 3 letters in Whitlock's handwriting, detailing the plan to move the coat, trigger the claiming, and use Odette as leverage to force a council review. The final letter was dated 2 days before the Ashbourne ball and contained one line that made Odette's blood run cold. Once the bond is set, we proceed with the asylum petition. He'll break when faced with that choice, or he'll prove himself unstable trying to stop it. Either way, we win. That bastard, Rowan breathed. Odette was already moving, gathering the letters, checking for anything else they could use. And then she found it. A sealed envelope addressed to the council, scheduled for delivery tomorrow morning. She opened it. Inside was a physician's report declaring her mentally unfit, signed and dated 3 days ago, before she'd even shown symptoms. They planned this from the beginning, she said quietly. The coat, the claiming, the separation, all of it. Tristan took the papers, his expression murderous. This is enough. We take this to the council, expose Whitlock's manipulation. No! Odette's voice cut through the room like steel. We don't take it to the council. We take it to him. Both men stared at her. Tomorrow morning, before the council meets, we confront Whitlock directly, in public, with witnesses. Her mind was racing now, pieces falling into place. We give him a choice, withdraw his petition and his votes, or we expose everything. The forgery, the coordination with Margot, the premeditated plan to have me committed for political gain. He'll deny it, Rowan said. Let him. Odette met Tristan's eyes. Because I'm not the scared girl who fled that ballroom anymore. I'm the woman who negotiated a contract with the Alpha King, survived a rogue attack, and stood down Lady Margot Thorne. And tomorrow I'm going to make Baron Whitlock Crane watch everything he built fall apart. Tristan stared at her. Then slowly, he smiled. You're terrifying. I'm effective. She tucked the letters into her coat. Now let's get out of here before... The door slammed open. Lady Margot stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 guards, her expression colder than Odette had ever seen it. How inconvenient, she said quietly. I was hoping you'd be easier to discredit than this. The confrontation lasted exactly 3 minutes. Margot tried to take the letters. Odette refused. Margot threatened to call the authorities. Tristan pointed out that breaking and entering was a lesser crime than conspiracy to commit fraud and false imprisonment. And then Rowan, quiet Rowan, who'd barely said 10 words to Odette since she'd arrived, stepped forward and said something that changed everything. I'll testify. Margot went very still. Excuse me? To the council, tomorrow. I'll testify that you approached me 2 weeks ago asking about the coat's properties, that you suggested moving it to the public cloakroom, that you told me it was for security purposes. His voice was flat, final. I should have questioned it then. I won't make that mistake again. The betrayal hit Margot like a physical blow. You would turn on your own kind for a human? I would turn on a traitor for my alpha, Rowan corrected. There's a difference. For a long moment, Margot just stood there, weighing options. Then she smiled, cold and bitter and somehow resigned. Fine, she said. Keep your evidence. Present it to the council. But understand this. You've made an enemy tonight, and I have a very long memory. She looked at Tristan, and for a second her mask slipped, revealing something that looked almost like pained frustration. This was never about your human. It was about a king who's been governing from a fortress of his own guilt for 5 years. Someone had to think of the stability you were too haunted to secure. So do I, Tristan said quietly. Margot left. They made it back to the estate as dawn broke over London, adrenaline still singing through Odette's veins. They had the evidence. They had Rowan's testimony. They had everything they needed to destroy Whitlock's case and expose the conspiracy. They'd won. Odette made it to the study before her legs gave out. Tristan caught her, steadied her, and for a moment they just stood there in the gray morning light, close enough that she could feel his heartbeat through his coat, smell cedar and smoke and wild things, see the exhaustion and relief and something else warring in his eyes. You were magnificent, he said quietly. I was terrified. You were both. His hands were still on her waist, warm and steady. You faced down Margot, planned a counteroffensive, and stole evidence from a high-ranking packwolf's home, all while bonded to me against your will and threatened with an asylum. I had help. You led." His voice dropped lower, rougher. "You made the plan. You took the risk. You turned Whitlock's trap into our weapon." He paused, and something in his expression shifted. "You saved us both." The weight of the night crashed down on her all at once. The fear, the fury, the desperate certainty that she was not going to let Whitlock win. And underneath it all, the bond, singing between them now, no longer a chain, but a connection she couldn't deny even if she wanted to. "Tristan," she whispered. He went very still. Don't what? Don't say my name like that. Not unless you mean it." His hands tightened on her waist. "Because I have been holding on by a thread since the moment you walked into that ballroom. And if you," Odette kissed him, "she didn't plan it. Didn't think about propriety or contracts, or the fact that they were standing in his study as dawn broke. And there were 100 reasons this was a terrible idea. She just closed the distance, rose on her toes, and pressed her mouth to his. For a heartbeat, Tristan went completely still. Then he made a sound low in his throat, something between a growl and a groan, and kissed her back. It wasn't gentle, wasn't careful. His hand slid from her waist to her back, pulling her closer, and her fingers tangled in his hair, and the bond flared between them like wildfire. She could feel everything, his relief, his hunger, the restraint that was fracturing with every second she stayed in his arms. He tasted like smoke and desperation and something wild she had no name for. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. "That," Tristan said roughly, "was a very bad idea." "Probably." Odette's hands were still in his hair. "Are you going to tell me to stop?" "No." His forehead dropped to hers, and she felt him shaking. "God help me, no. But Odette, we have a council meeting in 6 hours. Whitlock is going to fight dirty. And if we walk in there looking like we've finally stopped lying to ourselves about what this is?" His breath caught. "Yes. Good." She met his eyes, saw the wolf very close to the surface now. "Let him see. Let the whole council see. Because I'm done pretending the bond is just a political inconvenience. I'm done pretending I don't." She stopped, because the words were too big, too soon, too dangerous. But Tristan heard them anyway. She could see it in his expression, the way something fierce and possessive and utterly certain settled over him. "Say it," he demanded quietly. "Not yet." Odette's voice came out steadier than her hands. "Not until this is over. Not until we've buried Whitlock, and I know for certain this isn't just the bond talking." For a moment she thought he'd argue, demand she finish the sentence, make her say the thing they'd both been circling around since the night she'd grabbed his coat. Instead, he smiled, that sharp, approving smile that made her pulse kick. "Then let's finish this," he said, "together," and kissed her again. The council chamber was older than the estate, stone walls, high ceilings, and a heavy oak table that had witnessed centuries of pack law and territorial disputes. Odette stood at Tristan's right side, dressed in her most severe day dress, hair pulled back in a style that said respectable professional rather than scandalous mistress. The evidence folder sat in her hands like a weapon. Around the table sat 7 council members, including Lady Margot, who looked calm and composed despite the fact that her conspiracy was about to be exposed. Baron Whitlock sat opposite Tristan, flanked by his supporters, wearing an expression of concerned civility that made Odette's skin crawl. The council alpha, an elderly wolf named Councilman Pierce, called the session to order with a sharp rap of his gavel. "We're here to address Baron Crane's petition regarding Viscount Mallory's fitness to lead," Pierce said, voice gravelly with age. "Baron Crane, you have the floor." Whitlock stood, and Odette felt Tristan go very still beside her. "Thank you, Councilman." Whitlock's voice was smooth, reasonable, everything an Alpha King's should be. "I bring this petition not out of personal ambition, but out of genuine concern for our pack's security and our future." He gestured toward Odette without quite looking at her. 3 weeks ago, Viscount Mallory bound himself, through ancient and unpredictable magic, to a human woman, a woman with no pack ties, no understanding of our laws, and no ability to survive the bond's demands without constant proximity to him. Since then, we've witnessed unauthorized human presence at pack gatherings, a rogue attack on estate grounds that endangered civilians, and yesterday, a separation incident that left Miss Carraway visibly unstable at a public luncheon. Murmurs rippled around the table. I have testimony from Dr. Ambrose Hallow confirming that the bond requires Lord Mallory to remain within 50 feet of Miss Carraway most hours of the day. I have witness statements from the Ashbourne luncheon describing her collapse, and I have a physician's evaluation. He produced a document confirming that prolonged exposure to pack magic has rendered her mentally fragile and in need of professional care. He set the papers on the table with deliberate care. Lord Mallory is compromised. His judgment is clouded by a bond he never intended to form. And if we allow this to continue, we risk not just his stability, but the security of every wolf under his protection. Whitlock's gaze finally landed on Tristan. I propose a temporary removal of duties, pending proper resolution of the bond, with council oversight to ensure both his recovery and Miss Carraway's safety. The silence that followed was heavy. Then Councilman Pierce turned to Tristan. Your response, Lord Mallory? Tristan stood slowly. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, controlled, and absolutely lethal. Baron Crane has constructed an impressive narrative. Unfortunately for him, it's built entirely on lies. Odette stepped forward and placed the evidence folder on the table. 3 days ago, she said, voice steady despite her racing pulse, Lord Mallory and I discovered that the bond wasn't accidental. It was engineered. The coat I claimed at the Ashbourne ball was deliberately moved from secured storage to a public cloakroom where I would find it. The timing, the placement, the circumstances, all orchestrated. She opened the folder, revealing Whitlock's letters. These were found in Lady Margot Thorne's possession. They detail a conspiracy between Baron Crane and Lady Thorne to create this exact situation. Trigger the bond, use my symptoms as evidence of Lord Mallory's instability, and force a council review. She slid the first letter across the table. This one, dated 2 days before the ball, explicitly states, once the bond is set, we proceed with the asylum petition. Councilman Pierce picked up the letter, read it, and went very still. That's, Whitlock started. Forgery? Odette pulled out the second letter. This is your handwriting. Baron Crane. And this. She produced the predated physician's report. Is the evaluation you presented today, except it's dated 3 days ago, before I showed any public symptoms, before the luncheon, before you could have possibly observed my mental fragility. The room exploded. Council members talked over each other, demanding explanations. Margot's expression had gone carefully blank. Whitlock looked like he'd been struck. This is a fabrication, he tried. I'll testify that it's not. Rowan stood from his position against the wall, and every wolf in the room went quiet. Lady Thorne approached me 2 weeks ago, asking about the coat's properties. She told me moving it to the public cloakroom was for security purposes. I should have questioned it. I didn't. That's on me. But her involvement is real. And Baron Crane's letters prove coordination. Margot finally spoke, voice cold. I won't dignify this theater with a response. If you're accusing me of conspiracy, present it formally, and I'll defend myself through proper channels. Gladly, Tristan said. But first, let's address the asylum petition. He looked directly at Whitlock, and Odette felt the temperature in the room drop. You fabricated a medical evaluation to have Miss Carraway forcibly committed. Not because she's unstable, because she's inconvenient, because she helped me see through your manipulation, and now you need her silenced before she can expose you further. His voice went quieter, more dangerous. That's not protecting the pack, Whitlock. That's attempted false imprisonment of a human under my protection, which, according to pack law, is grounds for immediate exile. You can't prove, I can prove all of it. Tristan gestured to the evidence. The letters, the predated report, Rowan's testimony, and the fact that you've been undermining my authority for months while pretending concern for pack welfare. So here's what's going to happen. You withdraw your petition, you leave this council, and you pray I don't pursue formal charges that would strip you of everything you have. Or, his smile was all teeth. We let the council vote on whether attempted fraud and conspiracy warrant permanent exile. The silence was absolute. For a long moment, Whitlock just stared at the evidence on the table. Then something in his expression shifted, calculation giving way to something rawer, more desperate. "You're right," he said quietly. "I did orchestrate the bond. I did coordinate with Margot. I did everything you're accusing me of." The admission shocked the room into silence. "But I did it," Whitlock continued, voice rising, "because you are unfit. Because you've been compromised since the day you took the crown. Because 5 years ago, you lost control and people died. And you've been so terrified of it happening again that you've made yourself weak." Tristan went very still. "You think binding yourself to a human makes you stable?" Whitlock's voice turned sharp, mocking. "It makes you vulnerable. It makes you exactly what I said you were, compromised. And if this council won't see that," he moved, fast. Too fast for human eyes to track. One moment he was standing across the table. The next he was lunging for Odette with claws extended and murder in his eyes. Tristan shifted before Whitlock crossed half the distance. The transformation was instant, brutal, and absolutely controlled. 1 second, man. Next second, massive black wolf placing himself between Odette and the attack with a snarl that rattled the windows. Whitlock shifted mid-leap, smaller, lighter, but fast and vicious. They collided with enough force to crack the stone floor. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Wolves scattered, some shifted. Others shouted orders. Odette pressed herself against the wall, heart hammering, watching Tristan and Whitlock tear into each other with teeth and claws. But this wasn't like the rogue attack. This was different. Tristan was holding back. She could see it, the way he blocked instead of striking killing blows. The way he forced Whitlock down without going for the throat. He was fighting to subdue, not to kill. Whitlock wasn't. He went for Tristan's throat, his flanks, anywhere vital. Fought like a wolf with nothing to lose. And for a terrifying moment, Odette thought he might actually land a killing strike. Then Rowan shifted and joined the fight. Then 2 more council enforcers. Together, they brought Whitlock down, pinned him to the stone floor, jaws at his throat, claws digging into his shoulders hard enough to draw blood but not kill. Tristan shifted back first, breathing hard, bleeding from a gash across his ribs, but already healing. He stood over Whitlock in torn clothing and looked down at the wolf who'd tried to take everything from him. "Yield," he said quietly. Whitlock snarled. "Yield," Tristan repeated, voice dropping into alpha command. "Or I let them finish this." For a long, tense moment, Whitlock fought. Then slowly, he went limp, submissive, defeated. The enforcers shifted back, keeping him pinned. Councilman Pierce stepped forward, expression grave. "Baron Whitlock Crane, you stand accused of conspiracy, attempted fraud, false testimony, and physical assault on both the Alpha and a human under his protection. The council votes now. Exile or execution?" "Exile," Tristan said, before anyone else could speak. His eyes never left Whitlock. "Strip his rank, seize his assets, ban him from all pack territories, but don't kill him. He's not worth that." The vote was unanimous. They took Whitlock away in chains. Human chains, not pack law, because Tristan had called the human magistrate as well. Conspiracy to commit fraud and attempted assault were crimes in both worlds, and Whitlock would answer for both. Lady Margot was censured and stripped of her oversight duties, but allowed to remain on the council pending further investigation. She left without looking at any of them, and then it was over. The council chamber emptied slowly. Odette stood against the wall, still shaking, watching Tristan accept congratulations and formal acknowledgments from wolves who'd been ready to vote against him an hour ago. When they were finally alone, just her, Tristan, and Rowan, she let herself breathe. That, Rowan said quietly, was the stupidest thing Whitlock could have done. It was desperate. Tristan's voice was rough, exhausted. He knew the evidence would destroy him. Thought if he could kill her, make me lose control in front of the council. He trailed off, looking at Odette. "Are you all right?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. "Rowan, give us a moment." Rowan left. Tristan crossed to her slowly, carefully, like he was afraid she'd bolt. I'm sorry, I should have anticipated. You saved me. Odette's voice came out steadier than her hands. Again. You shifted to protect me. You held back from killing him even when he was trying to kill you. You. She stopped, because the words were too big again, too dangerous. But this time, she didn't hold them back. You chose me, she said quietly. Over revenge, over easy victory, over everything. Tristan's expression shifted, something raw and honest breaking through. Every time. I will choose you every time. Why? Because you're not just the bond. You're not just strategy or alliance or political convenience. He stepped closer, and she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the healing wound on his ribs, the weight of everything he'd just survived. You're the first person in 5 years who's made me feel like maybe I don't have to be perfect. Like maybe being controlled isn't the same as being strong. Like maybe, he stopped, throat working. Like maybe what, Odette whispered. Like maybe I'm allowed to want something for myself instead of just for the pack. The confession hit her like a physical thing. What do you want? She asked. Tristan's hands came up to cup her face, gentle despite the claws that were still half extended from the fight. You. Not because the bond demands it. Not because you're useful or strategic or any of the 100 rational reasons I've been telling myself for 3 weeks. His voice dropped. Just you, exactly as you are. Sharp and brave and so much more than I deserve. Odette's breath caught. That's not war. It's true. You've saved me more than I've saved you. You've made me better. Made me remember what it feels like to trust someone with the truth instead of just the crown. He paused. So I'm asking, not as your alpha, not as the man who holds your contract, just as someone who needs to know if this is real for you too. She should have been careful, should have thought through consequences and contract terms and what this meant for her future. Instead, she rose on her toes and kissed him. This kiss was different from the one in his study. That one had been desperate relief after surviving danger. This was choice, clear, deliberate, absolutely certain choice. Tristan made a sound low in his throat and pulled her closer, hands sliding from her face to her waist to her back, until there was no space between them at all. The bond flared, but underneath it was something simpler, more human, want and trust, and the kind of hunger that came from weeks of restraint finally breaking. Odette, he breathed against her mouth. Don't. She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. Don't be reasonable right now. Don't tell me all the reasons this is complicated or dangerous or too soon. Just. He kissed her again, harder this time, backing her against the wall with careful control even as his hands shook. She felt his claws still partially extended, still dangerous, catch in the fabric of her dress without tearing, felt the wolf very close to the surface, felt everything he was holding back even as he gave her this. I need to get you out of this room, Tristan said roughly. Before you what? Before I forget we're in a council chamber and do something that will get us both scandalized beyond repair. He pressed his forehead to hers, breathing hard. Your rooms, or mine, somewhere with a locked door and no witnesses. Her stomach flipped. Yours. They made it to his chambers in a blur of hallways and staircases and stolen kisses against walls. By the time Tristan closed and locked the door behind them, Odette's carefully pinned hair was half down, and his shirt was torn from the fight, and neither of them cared. I need to know you mean this, Tristan said, backing her toward the bed with deliberate slowness. That it's not just the bond or adrenaline or... She traced the line of his jaw. The contract. The unbinding. We never discussed what happens now. Hallow examined you while you slept, he said. His voice a low rumble beneath her ear. The bond has integrated. Reversing it would be destructive. It's not a leash anymore, Odette. It's a foundation. He paused, his next words deliberate. My question isn't how to remove it. It's if you'll build something with me on top of it. It's not. Odette caught his face in both hands, made him look at her. I'm choosing this, choosing you, not because I'm bound to you, not because you saved me, because you saw me, because you gave me power when everyone else tried to make me powerless, because you, her voice cracked, Because I trust you, and I want you, and I'm not afraid anymore. Something in his expression broke. He kissed her like she was air and he'd been drowning. Like 3 weeks of restraint had finally shattered completely. His hands found the buttons at the back of her dress, careful despite the urgency, giving her time to say stop if she wanted. She didn't want to stop. The dress fell away, his shirt followed, and then it was skin against skin, the bond singing between them, his mouth at her throat and her hands in his hair and heat building between them like wildfire. Tell me if it's too much, Tristan murmured against her collarbone. Tell me, and I'll stop. Don't stop. Odette arched into his touch, breath hitching. Don't you dare stop. He didn't. Later, much later, Odette lay tangled in Tristan's sheets, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow from frantic to steady. The bond had settled into something warm and right, no longer pulling or aching, just there, like it had always been meant to be. I need to tell you something, Tristan said quietly. Odette lifted her head to look at him. That sounds ominous. It's about the council vote, after Whitlock was removed. His hand traced idle patterns on her bare shoulder. Councilman Pierce made me an offer, a marriage alliance with the Thorne bloodline, not Margot, but her younger cousin. It would secure the Southern Territories, give me uncontested authority, and eliminate any remaining questions about my stability. Her stomach clenched. And I turned it down. Why? Because I don't want uncontested authority if it means giving you up. Because political advantage means nothing if I have to pretend this. He gestured between them. Doesn't exist. Because I've spent 5 years putting the pack first. And for once, for the first time since I took this crown, I chose something for myself. He met her eyes. I chose you. Odette's throat went tight. Tristan, that's a huge sacrifice. The Southern Territories will fall in line eventually, or they won't. Either way, I'm not trading you for political convenience. His voice was steady, certain. I'm offering you something different instead. What? He shifted, turning to face her fully. Partnership, real partnership. Not a contract with an end date. Not employment or protection or any of the careful terms we used to make this seem respectable. His hand found hers, laced their fingers together. Luna, if you want it. Equal, second in authority. My partner in every sense that matters. Her heart stopped. You're asking me to. Stay. Lead beside me. Help me rule this mess of wolves and politics and ancient laws that need updating. He smiled slightly. You're better at reading people than I am. Better at strategy. Better at knowing when to fight and when to negotiate. The pack needs that. I need that. He paused. But more than that, I just need you. Odette stared at him, mind racing. I'm human. The bond is changing that. Hallow confirmed it yesterday. You're already showing early signs of shifting. It'll take time, but eventually, he trailed off. You'll be one of us, if you want to be. And if I don't want to be Luna, if I just want to be yours, then you're just mine. No titles, no pack politics. I'll find another second, and you can live here as my partner without the formal weight. His thumb traced her knuckles. I'm offering you the choice, Odette. Power and respect, and a seat at the table, or privacy and freedom from pack obligations. Either way, you stay. Either way, you're mine, and I'm yours. It was everything she'd never let herself want. Not rescue, not safety, not some man's protection. Power, real power. The chance to shape her own future instead of just surviving it. I want the table, Odette said quietly. Tristan's eyes widened slightly. You're certain? I've spent my entire life being told to be quiet, be careful, be grateful for whatever scraps of respect society deigned to give me. I've been powerless and overlooked and treated like a problem to be managed. She sat up, met his eyes directly. I don't want to be protected from pack politics. I want to learn them, master them, use them. I want to be the person who sees what others miss and helps you outthink your enemies before they can strike. She took a breath. I want to matter, not as your human companion, as your equal. Tristan stared at her. Then slowly, he smiled. That fierce, approving smile that made her pulse kick. "Luna, then," he said. "We'll make it official at the next full council. You'll train with Rowan on pack law. Study territory management with the estate steward. Learn to shift when the bond completes the change." He pulled her back down against him. "And you'll stand beside me when I rebuild what Whitlock tried to destroy. Will they accept me? Some will, some won't. Some will test you constantly to see if you're worthy." His hand curved around her waist, possessive and gentle at once. "But you've already proven yourself. You outthought Whitlock, survived separation, faced down Margot, and stood your ground in a room full of wolves who would have eaten you if they sensed weakness. They'll learn to respect you. And the ones who don't," his voice dropped, "will learn to fear me." Odette felt something settle in her chest. Not the bond. Something simpler. Certainty. She'd made the right choice, not the safe one. Not the one that protected her reputation or preserved some fantasy of returning to human society. The choice that gave her power and purpose and the chance to be seen for who she actually was. "I have one condition," she said. "Name it. My family, my mother and sister. I want them protected. I want their debts cleared, my sister's dowry secured, and a house. Nothing grand. Just something safe and respectable where they won't have to depend on relatives who despise them. Done. I'll have it arranged by the end of the week." He paused. "Anything else?" "Yes." Odette turned to look at him fully. "I want the truth. Always. No matter how ugly or dangerous or complicated. If we're partners, I need to know everything. No protecting me from difficult information because you think I can't handle it." Tristan's expression shifted, something like relief crossing his face. "I can do that. On one condition of my own. Which is, you tell me when I'm wrong, when I'm being too controlled, too careful, too afraid of becoming what I was 5 years ago." His voice went quieter. "You're the only person who makes me feel like maybe discipline and tenderness aren't mutually exclusive. Like maybe I can be strong without being cruel to myself. I need you to keep reminding me of that." Odette's throat went tight. "I can do that. Then we have a deal." He kissed her, soft and slow and full of promises. "Partners. In everything." "In everything," she echoed, and meant it. They stayed in his chambers for the rest of the day and most of the night, talking through plans and logistics, and what her official role would look like. When exhaustion finally caught up with them, they fell asleep tangled together, the bond steady and warm and no longer something to fear. Odette woke to early morning light and Tristan's arm around her waist, his breathing slow and even against her neck. She didn't move, just lay there, feeling the weight of everything that had changed in 3 weeks. 3 weeks ago, she'd been desperate and invisible, a disgraced baronet's daughter, one mistake away from total ruin. Now she was Luna to be, partner to the Alpha King, a woman learning to shift and rule and wield power she'd never imagined having. It should have felt overwhelming. Instead, it felt right. "You're thinking too loudly," Tristan murmured against her shoulder. "How do you know I'm thinking?" "The bond. I can feel you spinning through scenarios and contingencies." He pressed a kiss to her shoulder blade. "What's worrying you?" Her mind, ever restless, was already turning, not toward fears, but toward logistics. The stack of territorial ledgers she'd seen on his desk, the complex lineage laws Rowan had mentioned in passing, the map of pack boundaries she wanted to understand down to the last mile. 3 months might see her named Luna, but only if she earned it, starting today. Nothing, for once, absolutely nothing. She turned in his arms to face him. "I'm just realizing that I'm not afraid anymore. Not of Whitlock, not of the council, not of being powerless. For the first time in my life, I feel like I have control over my future." "You do?" His hand came up to cup her face. "More than that. You have control over your present. What do you want right now, in this moment?" Odette considered, then smiled. "I want breakfast. I want to write to my mother and tell her I'm safe and happy and employed in a position that will secure our family's future. I want to start learning pack law from Rowan." She paused. "And I want you to stop looking at me like you're afraid I'll disappear if you blink." Tristan's mouth twitched. That obvious? Very, she kissed him lightly. I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me now. Good, he pulled her closer. Because I have no intention of letting you go. They stayed like that for a long moment, close and warm and completely at peace. Then Tristan stood, offered her his hand, and helped her up. Come on, Luna, we have work to do. Odette took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. Luna. The title still felt strange, too big, like wearing a crown that didn't quite fit yet. But she'd grow into it. She'd learn pack law and territory management and how to stand before a council full of wolves without flinching. She'd master the shift when it came. She'd become the kind of partner Tristan needed, sharp and strategic and absolutely unwilling to be dismissed. And somewhere along the way, she'd stop being the girl who grabbed the wrong coat at a ball and became the woman who transformed catastrophe into power, the woman who was finally, completely, undeniably seen. 3 months later, at the full council session, Odette Caraway was formally named Luna. She wore midnight blue silk, her hair pinned with silver that caught the lamplight. Tristan stood beside her in formal dress, hand resting lightly at the small of her back, a gesture that was now familiar, comfortable, theirs. When Councilman Pierce called for objections, the chamber stayed silent. When he asked if she accepted the responsibility of Luna, Odette didn't hesitate. I do. The bond flared, warm and steady and absolutely right. And when she met Tristan's eyes across the ancient oak table, she saw everything she'd never thought she'd have. Partnership, power, respect, and love that had been earned through fire and choice, and refusing to be anything less than exactly who she was. Welcome, Luna Caraway, Pierce said formally. But in her heart, in the bond that connected her to Tristan and the pack and the future she was building, Odette heard something different. Welcome home.